Joining me now to talk a bit more is A. Scott Bolden, NewsNation political contributor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
It was an emotional week of testimony. There were tears from Hunter Biden. What kind of stood out to you the most?
Well, this is a deeply personal issue for the Biden family or any family, drug addiction. Most of us have direct or indirect contact with someone in our family who has struggled with addiction, whether it's drugs, alcohol, and what have you. And so it's emotionally draining that, having represented Marion Barry several years ago, I know that pain. And the former mayor of Washington, D.C. used to say, my addictions are no different than anyone else's. Mine are just playing out in the public. Does anybody want to switch places with me? I don't see any takers. And so for the Bidens, I've lived through this, having clients like Marion Barry. And what stood out at me was the fact of how deeply painful it is for their family to recount this. The feds are making them do it. And the reality is, this testimony is important, but it doesn't get to the core issue. Vis-a-vis, at the time Hunter Biden signed that, filled out that form, and at the time he was in possession of the weapon, did he believe he was a drug addict? Regardless of the book or what everybody else says he was a drug addict, was he using drugs then? And then secondly, even if he was wrong about that, if he believed that in his heart of hearts and filled out that form and possessed that gun, it still doesn't prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, because he could be fundamentally wrong about that. But if he's credible in what he believed, then the jury can accept that. To make that type of defense, though, he's got to get on the witness stand.
I want to bring up some texts that were shown in court from a conversation between Hallie Biden and Hunter. This is on October 14th, 2018. And it kind of goes to your point here of what was he addicted to? When was he addicted to it? And was the addiction relevant when he got this weapon? And the text says, this is 5:37 p.m. on October 14th, 2018. I was sleeping on a car, smoking crack on 4th Street and Rodney. Then he responds to Hallie, where are you? There's my truth. Where were you? Trying to get her to respond. She doesn't respond until the next day, saying, I just want to help you get sober. Nothing I do or you do is working. I'm sorry. Embarrassing, absolutely. Seeing one of your worst moments splashed up there, heartbreaking. As you said, we've all dealt with addiction in some way, shape, or form in our own lives. But this does get to the question of whether or not he was, in fact, an addict when he filled out this form. But I'm curious from you whether or not you think this matters in the context of President Biden's reelection campaign.
Well, the GOP certainly believes it should be relevant and probative and material. But the reality is that Joe Biden isn't on trial. Hunter Biden is. Hunter Biden's a private citizen. And I just, given my experience as a former party chair and having been through several elections with presidential candidates, I don't believe that the American public compares Donald Trump, a candidate and nominee of the GOP for president, and Hunter Biden. No matter how many times GOP legislators want to make that connection and say, aha, they're comparable, this is a false comparison. And Hunter Biden, I'll be quite honest with you, these types of charges, if his name wasn't Hunter Biden, it would be unlikely that he'd be facing these charges independent of other significant gun charges or conspiracy charges. These charges he's facing are usually connected to a larger crime. As a former federal and state prosecutor, I can attest to that. And so I don't think the voting public, is going to hold Hunter Biden's addictions against Joe Biden. But the GOP better be careful, because this is a deeply emotional issue that we all know of, and they could create sympathy for the Biden family if they go too hard on this politically.
And you're right. He's not running for elected office. He is not a part of the administration. He is, in fact, a private citizen. If he gets convicted, whether or not a pardon is on the table, that could certainly shift things politically. But A. Scott Bolden, thank you so much, our NewsNation political contributor.
Thank you.